Okay, looks like we stabilized. So Chris, if we can go to the next slide. So while we are in a Zoom webinar mode, we're fairly safe from Zoom bombing, but there are some things to be aware of just from a security perspective. Do not click on any links that somebody may put in the chat box that are URLs or anything like that. They could be suspicious links. Do not raise your hand. I think we've got that turned off, but if you do see raise your hand, we're not going to see it anyways. And there's also somebody may try to put a link in the question and answer part of the webinar. Now, the way it's going to work is that as we have our speakers, and if you have any questions, please check on the Q&A box if you have any questions for the speakers. And if the question is appropriate and at an appropriate time, I will read out the question to the speaker. And the chat box is for you folks to chat among yourselves. We will not be monitoring the chat box throughout the session this evening. So next slide, please. So here is tonight's program. We've got a great program for you. We're almost through the introduction. Mike, who is our president, has got a notice regarding the annual general meeting, which is next month. I've got the standard Ottawa skies for November. We're really glad to have Dr. Phil Groff and Jenna Hinds from our RASC headquarters in Toronto. And they originally were supposed to be with us back, was it May timeframe, I think was the last time we attempted to get you here. There was a rail blockade. And time before that, there was a big snowstorm. So in any case, they're joining us virtually. It's great to finally have them here virtually in Ottawa. And I look forward to their talk here this evening. Approximately 8:20 thereabouts, we're going to have a break with our M&M challenge. And then very pleased to have Dr. Patrick Boyle to speak to us about the CHIME telescope. There's been a lot of stuff actually recently in the news on CBC and everything about some of the stuff that they've been doing. I'm looking forward to what he's going to share with us this evening. We have a bunch of observations and we do have some announcements. So let's move on to the next slide. Members in the news, congratulations to Stephen Brown of the Ottawa Centre, who received his Explore the Universe certificate. So congratulations. Okay, new members. We've done fairly well this year. We have 60 new members in 2020 and one new member who joined last month. Welcome, David Morgan, to the RASC Ottawa Centre. Okay, Mike, it's over to you.
Hi, everyone. Well, it's my duty to inform you of the annual general meeting that will occur as part of the December meeting. We will be reminding you of this with an email as well. At the annual general meeting, we will take stock of the past year. You'll hear a report from me from the past year. You'll hear an annual report from our treasurer. And most importantly, you'll hear about, we will elect officers, councillors, national council reps, and so on, as Tim Cole, who's part of the nominations committee, will explain next. Okay.
Okay. So Tim, hang on a second here. I just have to, there we go. I have to find you here. There we are. Okay, Tim, you need to unmute yourself and I will spotlight you. There we go.
Okie dokie, I'm here. Okay, every year we have an opportunity to elect members of the council and also to fill appointed positions. What we have on the screen right now is a proposed slate for the upcoming year. Now, a lot of people will take this to mean that, well, these are the people who are going to be it. And that's not the way to look at it. These are people who have agreed to serve if elected. Anybody in good standing in the club can put in a nomination for any of these positions. And, simply because there's an incumbent doesn't mean that you shouldn't put your name in if you really feel that you want to do the job. Excuse me for a second. Sorry about that, folks. Now, I should point out a couple of small details. Well, I guess they're not that small. We have 3 positions that are term limited. And that's the position for the president, the vice president, and the meeting chair. And people in those positions are limited to 2 terms. What we've been doing since, time immemorial, I guess, is running a fairly, I think, an effective system whereby the vice president will serve for 2 terms, and then barring someone else coming in and being elected, would then take on the job of the presidency for 2 terms and then move on to be past president, which, among other things, means that you run the nomination committee. In fact, you are the nomination committee, but that's another story. Okay, so again, none of this is cast in stone. Anybody can apply and go for a nomination at any time, but the system that we've been using informally seems to work out pretty well. Now, the jobs are listed in, I believe it's the October 2020 estimates. I think that's the most recent update on the functions for the council. You will notice that we have an overload here. Dave Chisholm will be taking on the position, assuming that he's elected, of vice president, and is also down as meeting chair. There's another year left on meeting chair. It would be nice if somebody could take on the meeting chair task.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, and thus leave Dave free to look after the vice presidency. However, we must have a vice president, and we can muddle around sharing up meeting chair functions if we need to. So anybody who's interested in doing the meeting chair job, please consider putting in for that slot.
Yeah, if you have any questions about that particular position, please contact me. And just a second here. There we go. Yeah, if you have any questions about the meeting chair position, please contact me. And I'm quite willing to sort of do a co-chairing for this year if somebody's interested in doing it, but isn't comfortable sort of jumping right in January 1st. In the meantime, I'm going to continue to do both roles. The vice president is not particularly busy initially in the first part of the year. So anyways, any questions about that position, please just let me know. Okay, next slide.
Okay, this pretty much sums up what I said earlier. You'll find descriptions in the current October Astronautes. You may nominate for any position, including ones that we've provided a slate number for. Remember, those are people who are willing to serve, not people who have been appointed yet. Yes, National Council representatives must be at least 21. I have no idea why that is, but it is. You'll notice that we have 2 National Council representative positions available, and thus far we have only 1 person who's indicated willingness to serve. So please consider that. And you'll notice how one goes about nominations. Nominations must be supported by 2 members and sent to the secretary by 8 p.m. on November 29th, and that's to make sure that we have enough time for the AGM, the annual general meeting, which this year, because we have to do it by Zoom, we do need a little more prep time. Okay, now for appointed positions, you will notice that we have our current bunch of people. Everybody here has agreed to take on the task for another while. You will notice that we have 2 openings, one for light pollution and then a biggie for public star parties. That does seem like an onerous position, and I guess a lot of people would say, no, I don't want to do it. However, we are working on making sure that the job is not a real backbreaker. And one of the things that we're putting together is lists of people to assist, excuse me for a second, to assist with the star parties, acting as marshals for coordination and getting people parked and set up and organized. So the more people that we have being willing to work on the public star parties, the better we'll have it, and the less work it is for everybody involved. Again, you'll find the description for this in the October 2020 Astronauts. Now, these as appointed positions, they aren't elected. The council appoints them. which usually means we run out and bag them and make them do the job. No, actually, seriously speaking, though, I mean, we always, there's a problem that there aren't enough people who volunteer for these jobs. I think many cases people are afraid that it's going to be far too much work. And we'll do everything we can to help you out with any of these positions. And if you think you might be interested in it, then by all means, put yourself in for it. If you're even not certain what's involved, then ask about it. You may discover that it's something that you'd like to do, and you may also discover that it's not what you want, and that's fine. At least you'll have looked into it and you'll have made a decision rather than just say, I'll leave it to somebody else. So please consider these positions. They're essential to keeping the club operating and making it a worthwhile thing for all our members. And you might discover that you actually enjoy doing some of this stuff. Particularly with public star parties, you may discover that, for example, working as a marshal to help out is right up your alley. So by all means, give this stuff a thought. Do consider putting in a nomination for the elected positions, and do consider offering your services for any of the appointed positions. And that's pretty much all I've got to say. Anybody got any questions? Grumbles? Going once? Okay.
But somebody's
All right,
already nominated you to be meeting chair, Tim.
With all due respect, I've been asked to do that before, and it's not a task that I do well. I can handle the stage stuff, but organization, I have helped work on it before, and I do a really, really rotten job. I'm perfectly willing to stand up and do the song and dance. That I do well, but the organization stuff, well, trust me, you do not want me to organize a flatulence competition at a bean bake-off.
Okay, well, we'll leave it there. Okay, moving on. So we also, at our annual general meeting, we have 2 awards. We have the Paul Commission Observer of the Year Award and the Rolf Meyer Award for Planetary Observation. And those need to be submitted to myself, and we'll make a determination and announce the winner at our annual general meeting. They need to be to me by Friday, November the 27th, so that we can get all the appropriate award materials together. So if you can do that, that would be great. Okay. Okay, moving on to the Ottawa skies. So for November, let's go to the next screen, please, Chris. Well, here we are. We're on the 6th of November. We've got our full moon on the 30th, our new moon on the 15th. We've switched to standard time on the 1st, which is sort of nice. You don't have to stay up quite so late to start your observing. The full moon this month is known as the beaver moon, because this is the time of the year to set beaver traps before the swamps and the rivers froze. It's also been known as the frosty moon and the dark moon. That's the one on the 30th of November. Next slide, please. Well, we've got a penumbral lunar eclipse Monday, November the 30th from 2:32 in the morning to 6:53 in the morning. This is not a full lunar eclipse. This is actually sort of boring. It's just a little bit of a shadow going across the face of the moon. Best way to capture it will probably be with some time-lapse photography. Basically, it's just the outer shadow of the Earth that covers the moon. It's not completely blocked out. But if you're into that, and get up at 2:32 in the morning on Monday, November the 30th. Okay, next slide. Okay, so we have some meteor showers this month. We have the Northern Torrens meteor showers on November 11th and 12th, and about 5 to 10 meteors per hour. It's going to be good this year because there's just a thin crescent moon, so the sky should be dark enough for you to be able to observe that. Meteors will radiate from the constellation Taurus, but can appear anywhere in the sky. Next slide, please. We also have the Leonids meteor shower. So these ones are a little bit more active, about 15 meters per hour. In this case too, there's a crescent moon. It will set early in the evening, leaving the dark skies for what should be an excellent show. That's November 16th and 17th. Next one, please. Okay, as you can see, the days are obviously getting shorter with the sunrise and sunset times. Next slide. Mercury. So we've got the greatest western elongation on November the 10th. And so we look for the planet low in the eastern sky just after sunrise. And yeah, so that's we will be able to see Mercury this month. Venus is visible before sunrise, and Mars is visible in the evening and through the night. Jupiter is visible in the evening. Saturn is also visible in the evening. Uranus is visible all night, as is Neptune. And here's our cartoon of the month. Okay, let me just remove my spotlight here and move on to the next slide. Oh yes, one of the things that I do when I'm not meeting chair is that I do a lot of interactive, virtual interactive introduction to astronomy for scouts and guides, and mostly in the Ottawa area, but I have done one in London. I've got a request in from Winnipeg right now. And basically they just come in via Zoom and I give them a quick introduction to astronomy. If you know a group that might be interested in this, it doesn't have to be scouts or guides, but those are the groups I mostly work with. And have them send me an email and I'll be happy to set up an appointment with them. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, well, we're pleased to have Dr. Phil Groff, the RASC Executive Director. I'm just going to spotlight you, and you're good to go. Now, Phil, do you have a slide to show, or?
I do, actually. If you could just let me share the screen, I'll.
Yeah, you should be able to. Yeah, as a panelist.
Sorry, just before that, Mike was going to say a few words.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Dave. Yeah, so hi again, everyone. I'm really delighted to introduce Phil Groff and Jenna Hinds from the national RASC national office. For those of you who are new to the RASC, Phil is the executive director of the RASC, and Jenna is the outreach coordinator. I'm really thrilled that both of them can speak tonight. They're part of a team at the national office that are advancing us with programs and services for members, and also helping us promote our mandate, our interest in astronomy broadly. I'd very much like to invite them again to join us in person once the pandemic is behind us. But I'd also like everyone to see a very cool 3D model of the night sky that Jenna designed that is very creative and very thought-provoking. And she promised she's going to bring it. I saw it at the GA that was held in Toronto at York University. And I thought it was pretty cool, very creative, and worth sharing. So with that, Phil and Jenna, thanks for coming, and look forward to your talk tonight.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I know Jenna does as well. I'll let her, of course, speak for herself when she gets a turn at the mic. So, just give me one more second here. Thanks. I'd forgotten to hit share computer sound there. Now we're good. Okay. Thank you. It seems like it's been forever since I was first invited with Jenna to come to this meeting. We've had two false starts, of course, as you heard. One was because of bad weather, and then we had an actual rail strike that kept us from coming the second time, a rail disruption rather, that kept us from coming a second time. And so I wasn't sure this was ever going to take place. What I will assure you, in light of what Mike just said with his generous invitation, and assuming the rest of you feel the same, the fact that we're doing this virtual meeting now in no way eliminates the obligation I made when I promised that I would come and visit every center in the society. In fact, I foolishly promised I would do that in my first year on the job. Obviously, that didn't work out. I could claim it's because my first year was a little non-standard, and I think I'd probably get some agreement for that. But the reality is I also just hadn't thought things through carefully and hadn't realized there was simply no way I could get to 30 centers across the country when a lot of them hold their meetings on the same Friday night, for example. And so I will get to every center. I promise I will get to Ottawa. I love Ottawa. It's a great town. And I promise that Jenna and I will be up there in person real soon. So just a few words about my background. For those of you who haven't had a chance to get to know me at all yet, I'm a psychologist by training. That's what my PhD is in, but a lifelong science nerd. and someone who certainly grew up watching Carl Sagan and looking at the skies, and was raised on Star Trek by my father, and so I've always had a lifelong love of space and of astronomy. And so this job was really a dream come true when I saw it advertised. What I have done for the past almost 20 years now is dedicate myself to not-for-profit and charitable organization management. And I've done it in a number of different capacities, but often in a senior management leadership role, as I'm doing here. And so it was, I think that's the skill set that I built up over those years that probably appealed to the board of directors when they brought me on board. And so I'm thrilled to be here, and it's fun to be able to talk science with like-minded nerds across the country. And it's actually part of my day job now, not a distraction from my day job. So I really appreciate that. Last but not least, fun fact, or I hope you find it to be a fun fact, I'm also a professional magician, member of the Magic Castle in Hollywood, California and such. And when I come to see you in person in Ottawa, I promise if you ask, I will show you a little something, but I'm not going to do anything tonight because too much possibility of trick camera work and such when we're on Zoom. Anyway, why don't I just take you through some slides. For some of you, my remarks are going to be really old hat because some of you are really long-time members of the society and know this stuff backwards and forwards much better than I do, of course. And so I ask you to be patient with me. Some folks, however, as we know, are newer members and may not know this and may not have had all this put together in one spot at one time before. My goal in promising to come to visit all the centers was that I would try to reopen some of the dialogue and communication between the national office and the centers that I kind of got the sense when I took on my role had eroded a little bit over the last couple of years, and I wanted to restore a sense of community, communion, openness, transparency, and so that's why I'm here tonight to just share everything. And I usually subtitle this presentation "Everything You Always Wanted to Know About the RASC But Were Afraid to Ask," and so you can ask me anything, and I promise I will, to the best of my ability, answer your questions. So, first of all, this is a slide that our president Robin Foray put together, and it really sort of describes the core of our current and our ongoing mission as an organization, and really the strategic plan that we're following, where we really hold ourselves to trying to achieve in these 5 core areas. And I think it's important to kind of recognize that those 5 areas are almost like equally valuable from a certain perspective. Although I will say, first and foremost, we are a membership-based organization, so we consider providing value to our members to be really first and foremost of the things we try to do on a day-to-day basis, the staff and I, when we meet and when we're planning what has to happen. But we also want to provide value to centers, not just individual members. And so it's all of the various tools that we provide, all of the various resources we provide, a lot of the time of various staff members that we provide. All of that is the way we provide value to members, value to centers. Then there's the value to the public. The Royal Astronomical Society of Canada has always been more than just a club of astronomers. It's also meant to be a voice for astronomy, for space science in the general public of Canada, and to really raise awareness, raise appreciation for astronomy, for astrophysics, for all the related disciplines, and also just less formally to inculcate and promote amongst our fellow Canadians and even society beyond Canada a love of the night sky, a curiosity about the universe and about our place in it. And so that's really what we see as another important, crucial pillar of our strategy. We try to provide value to the scientific community, perhaps not as much as we may have in the past. Of course, a lot of the professional astronomers have their own professional organization that they spend most of their time with, but we still have far more professionals who are a member of RASC than any other amateur astronomy organization in the world. And I think that really speaks well to the long history, the culture, the quality of observation, and just the camaraderie of this society, that so many professionals still choose to be a member of it, even though they have their own other organization to deal with their professional needs. And so where we do try to provide value to the scientific community, if not so much by sort of being a community of professionals, is we publish the only peer-reviewed journal on astronomy in Canada. We try to support young researchers, students before they enter university. There's a lot of the outreach work that Jenna has done over the years with young people in high schools, for example, which are really laying the groundwork for the next generation of professionals and scientists in a variety of fields. And if we can sort of awaken some of that scientific curiosity in the next generation of Canadians, I think we've really have provided some value to the scientific community. Last but not least, of course, none of this is possible if we're not financially sustainable. And so that has to be a pillar of this stool as well, which is we have to always be making sure that as we're serving these 4 other pillars, we're able to keep standing up. And so trying to remain financially sustainable is an important aspect of what we do as well. So I'm going to give you a moment to memorize this because there will be a test on this in the next hour. The reality is this is just a diagram to illustrate the complexity of the society, because I think sometimes we forget just how large and complex and convoluted some of our structures are, just by virtue of the fact that we've been around for 153 years. We have 5,000 members from coast to coast to coast, and we just have a lot of structures that have grown up over the years to serve those 5 core strategic pillars we were talking about. We've got the membership. It said everything on this slide is out of date, by the way. We've got the membership, 29 centers. We actually now have 30 centers. Well, it hasn't been approved yet. There will be a formally approved on the 25th of November at our next board meeting, but the Fraser Valley astronomers have jumped through all the hoops and created the revised constitutional documents they needed to, and they will be joining RASC as our 30th center before the end of 2020. So we welcome the folks from Fraser Valley. The membership, as I mentioned, there are nearly 5,000 people across the country. We hope to grow it back up over 5,000. In fact, my 5-year plan is to try and as close as possible to double that in the next 5 years. But that's a very ambitious plan, and I am not pledging to accomplish that. So I'm not gonna be held to that, particularly if we have any more years like 2020 that come along to sort of surprise us with all sorts of unanticipated delights. The membership in the centers has representation nationally through the National Council, and you were talking about appointing your, electing your members, your representatives there at your coming AGM. National Council, of course, is a body that serves as, if you will, the committee of centers. It's like a parliament of all of the reps from across the country that are really brought together to. That's the place where center issues get raised, and where we try to promote center-to-center learning. Some place, say the Halifax Center is having a problem. Turns out that the Calgary Center had that same problem 2 years ago and found a solution for it. This is the place where we can connect them so that best practices can get shared around, and we grow as a society as a result. It's also an opportunity to set kind of national agenda items, like where are the next couple of General Assemblies going to be? Well, the next one's going to be virtual, just like the last one was. So it's not going to be anywhere except on Zoom. But the one beyond that, we know is almost certainly going to be taking place in Winnipeg. They've already stepped up. They were going to do it in 2021, but that doesn't look like, of course, it's possible anymore. But the National Council will be the one setting the calendar beyond 2021 to figure out where the next 3, 4, 5 GAs will be. And also, of course, creating a community that can mentor and be part of the recruitment process for new centers, such as when the Fraser Valley folks come on board, to help them come on board and learn what it means to truly be a member of the society and a center of the society. That's really the role of the National Council. The legal governance of the organization, of course, rests with our board of directors, because we're in a corporation, and of course that's what has to happen. There are currently 7 members on the board. We have 2 vacancies that the board is trying to fill right now, and then we'll have some elections, of course, before our AGM in the spring, which will, of course, turn over some other positions on the board as well. The board members, of course, as I said, have a fiduciary responsibility to the society, and they're the legal they're the legal governance of the society, but they also take an active role in the volunteer running of the society. Each of the directors assumes a role on one or more of the standing committees that exist throughout the organization. It's really the committees where a lot of the core work of the society, as you know, has been done over the last couple of years. Increasingly supported by staff. Now that we have more professional staff on board, we're able to accomplish a little bit more, and the committees are able to devolve some of the execution of plans and such to staff members. The staff you see listed over here at the side, again, out of date. We have Renata, who's our accounting manager, who many of you have dealt with if you've had issues in the past in some way with invoices or other accounting matters. She's also, in many ways, the institutional memory of the organization. She's been with us for 10 years, and so we all depend on her to remind us, no, we can't do this way because we tried that 8 years ago, and here's why it failed. Adela, of course, is our membership administration coordinator. She's been in contact with folks here in Ottawa and with other people across the country, trying to set up some meetings to look at ways to build and grow and sustain our members in these challenging times. Jenna, of course, everyone knows she's practically the face of the organization right now. She does so much online programming for us, and you've all had an opportunity, I'm sure, to be present for at least one session she's run, if not several. And of course, you'll be seeing her again later this evening. Eric, our former marketing communications coordinator, no longer with the organization. He left at the beginning of the month of October. So I have to take him off of this slide here. And we have a number of students who are working with us part-time, who are helping us to accomplish everything that we're doing right now. So I'll just briefly mention Samantha helping with our outreach activities, Reem, who's helping with all of our communication activities, and Katerina, who's sort of helping in the office with a lot of the administrative work, particularly in this busiest time of the year for the office, when in addition to having the largest turnover in membership, it always takes place in the fall, it's also when, of course, we're having to ship out handbooks and calendars and Christmas orders and all kinds of other stuff. So that's the team, and that's how the organization runs. But I just wanted to give you a sense of how it's impossible for this poor schmuck in the little gray box up here to keep track of all of this, much less run all of this. So be patient, is all I'll say. I'm going to kick over to the next couple of slides here, which I know are what people really want to talk to me about and ask questions about. And I encourage you to ask as brutal questions as you like. We're going to talk about money. Okay, so people want to know where we get our money from, where we're spending our money, how are we doing year over year, and how are we doing against our budget? Let's answer those questions now. The RASC really generates funds in three major pots. There are three major sources of funding that we have. We have our membership fees, which are about a third of the money that comes into the organization, a little less than a third now. We have our publications, which generate a little bit over a third of our revenue. And then we have sort of collectively everything else, but primarily donations and grants. And donations and grants historically weren't a major part of funding for the RASC, but since we've hired our amazing fundraising coordinator, Lisa DeVito, they've become increasingly impressive components of our budget every year, and allow us to do a lot of other activities that we wouldn't be able to, such as, for example, hiring a Jenna. So those are really the three big buckets where the money comes in. I thought I would just highlight some of the differences between this year and last year. Last year, just because, in 2019, because the head office ended up having to run the General Assembly, and it was not a virtual General Assembly, we had income and expenses related to that event, and that's why it appears on this chart here. Normally, we wouldn't have money there for the General Assembly. Our investment income in 2019 was an amazing year. We generated more than $60,000 of interest on our investment income. It was just fantastic. I was so excited to drop my budgets for 2020. Really wanted to get a balanced budget and not have to dip into our savings anymore. Be sure that we were in the black and everything's gonna be great. But I recognized we couldn't count on having as good an investment year as we'd had the previous year. So working with the finance committee, we budgeted a much more modest return on our investments, for 2020. And then, of course, in March of 2020, the world ended, and our investments took an enormous hit. What I'll say right now is, if you see right there, we're currently at minus $5,000 return on our investments for this year. I'm considering that a win right now, here as of October 31st, because I know where that number was back in April, and it was like at minus 40,000 and not looking very good at all. So the fact that we're climbing out of that hole, as I'm sure all of you are seeing if you have RRSPs or other investments of your own, as 2020, this remarkable year is drawing to a close, it's improving, but slowly. Our other main investment, however, is a different story, and that's Sky News Magazine. In 2019, Sky News had a particularly bad year and ended up costing the organization $64,000. Does not look like a good investment at all at that point. What I will say, and this is really important to note, Sky News is on a different schedule than we are. Sky News is, because Sky News was, of course, set up as an independent business long before RASC was in any way involved with it. Sky News runs on a fiscal year of April to March. So whatever financial situation Sky News is in as of March 31st is what's going to last, it's going to be frozen in time effectively on RASC's books for the rest of that calendar year. So the 2019 year-end figure for Sky News, minus $64,000, is really where they were at March of 2019. We then spent a lot of 2019 and a bit of 2020, of course, turning the magazine around. We have new staff, an amazing new editor, an amazing new designer, new look, new feel, new publisher. A lot of work went into designing a whole new website for it, new electronic presence, made new arrangements with the distribution house that we were working with. And as a result, we've really turned things around. I budgeted, fingers crossed, that we'd at least zero out for this year. And we actually ended up a little bit in the black. As of March of 2020, our profits, I'm pleased to say, from Sky News Magazine were $2,000. Since March of 2020, those have continued to climb. We're anticipating that by the end of Sky News 2021 year, i.e. March 31st, 2021, that number is going to look more like $70,000 in the black. Don't want to say that too much out loud because I don't want to jinx it, but the thing has turned around and the magazine is now performing for us as we had always hoped it would. And eventually the plan is probably to bring it in-house as just a publication like the journal within the RASC. But we have to be careful how we do that, because whatever year we do that on, we're going to, of course, take a hit on our own books for the liability of bringing that magazine on board, because of all the you owe people subscriptions and such. And so as a result, for 1 year, the RASC will have a bad bottom line again. And I know our membership will yell at us when we get to the AGM when that happens. So we're a little, we're a little cautious about pulling the trigger on that too quickly. But eventually we do want to bring it in-house and not deal with it as an arm's length corporation. That's the revenue side. I'm going to go on and talk about expenses, and then you can ask me questions about all the money, or we can go on, I can finish the rest of my slides and you can ask me any questions you want. Okay. Expenses really come into 4 big categories. So the revenues were 3, publications, membership, and then donations and grants. Our expenses are in 4 main buckets. We have expenses for member services, which is direct services we provide to individual members. So this is keeping your records for you, processing your bank transactions, shipping copies of the Observer's Handbook to you, shipping copies of Sky News, like everything we do for individual members, that's the member services line. Then there's, beyond that, under the programming line, which is another of the 4 big pillars, you'll see this top line here, which is public/center outreach. That's really center services. So that's everything we at the national office do for the centers. Everything from providing insurance certificates to materials that we provide to the centers to the time that individuals have to spend on helping with collecting data and things like that. So that's the second big pool, and we lump it in with programming because we consider that to be sort of a programmatic expense, because it's really about outreach. That we invest in the centers because the centers are sort of how we do outreach as a society. Publications is the third major expense category for us. Yeah, publications make us $250,000 a year, but we spend almost half of that to generate that income, because publications cost. There's printing costs, there's editing costs, there's everything that goes into a publication, as you can imagine. And so those are the costs that figure into the publication line. Last but not least, there's national operations. That's everything else. That's paying a chunk of my salary, the rent on the building we have in Toronto, our insurance and our directors and officers' insurance, that sort of thing. So that's the fourth major bucket. So national operations, member services, publications, and programming. The biggest slice of programming being that public center outreach. Although we have other programs that are now starting to become big in their own right, like the Robotic Telescope, the Dorner Telescope Museum, and of course the work that's being done on youth outreach and education through the Outreach and Education Committee and through Jenna's efforts. So that's really it. There's where the money comes in, there's where the money goes out, and what you can see is I very carefully budgeted this year, so we'd end up with an $18,000 surplus. As of August, sorry, it says August 31st here. I'm sorry, that should say October 31st. As of October 31st, we're at a $58,000 surplus. That's going to erode down to 18 or maybe even a little below that, simply because this is the fall, and this is when we have a lot of our expenses. This is when we're shipping books and doing a lot of stuff like that. So it's an expensive time of year for us. Having said that, I see no reason why we can't finish the year in the black, and that is my goal to at least, however difficult 2020 has been for a variety of reasons, internationally and nationally, we're still going to try and hold to our original plan and bring us in, on time and on budget with everything that we're doing. So that's the numbers. So I could pause for questions now, or I could go on to just speak to some of the rest of my slides. I guess I'll just continue on, and then I'll answer all the questions at the end. How's that? So when I started with the organization a little over a year ago in October of 2019, I was asked to do a little review of what the challenges were that I saw facing RASC. And so after reviewing just tons of documents, speaking to board members, speaking to lots of volunteers, speaking to Randy every day for my first month on the job, speaking to the staff, speaking to a lot of people, it became clear that the RASC has a couple of core problems. And the good news and the bad news is they're exactly the same core problems that every single other membership-based association on the planet has right now. And I've listed them here. This is fairly common knowledge. Time, right? Everyone's time is tighter now. Everyone laments this, right? From programmers at television stations to advertisers to of course people who run associations like us, is that everyone's time is being stretched thin, which means no one has the time to devote to any one thing that they used to have. And so volunteers get burned out. People's attention is divided in more places. It's harder to get a core audience for any one thing and get them to spend some time with you. Time is a challenge. Value expectations have changed. People have a very different sense, and this actually links to the fourth bullet there, generational difference. Over time, people's assumptions of what it means to be a member of something have changed, and what they expect to get out of that membership. And there's always the back and forth challenge between, well, membership should be about community building and being part of a community, and it should be about feeling your sense of ownership and pride in being part of a society, versus kind of the transactional view that, well, membership actually should have a variety of benefits associated with them, and those benefits obviously have costs associated with them, and those costs should be, reflected in what the membership fees are. And so those are the challenges that are facing every organization, as people's expectations of what they expect to get from a membership in an organization have changed. And that's not just the membership aspect, but the market as a whole has changed. There are market changes in play that are affecting major retailers across the planet, publishers across the planet, and of course, little charitable organizations and clubs across the planet as well. And what some of these are: trends towards globalization and just-in-time marketing and all of the sort of things that have been happening in the global marketplace that make it harder to run an association. Like it's hard for us to get our members to understand why it takes us a week or two sometimes to process an order and get an observer's handbook out the door to someone, when of course you can go on Amazon and click next day delivery and have a book show up at your house. Yeah, but we're not Amazon. We don't have that kind of infrastructure, and so these are the sort of challenges that a lot of organizations are facing. Competition. This is kind of also the evil twin of the time bullet up there, which is there's just lots more for folks to do with their time, with their talent, with their treasure, and so it's harder for people to choose to be sort of I'm focused on being a member of the RASC and I'm really going to sort of devote myself to this. And then last but not least, technology is a challenge, right? Everything is changing so quickly all the time. And if you're not keeping abreast with it, you can very easily lose your audience, very easily lose touch with your communities, very easily become irrelevant. And so these are challenges, as I said, they can be fatal. There are many membership-based organizations around the planet that are failing. So the fact that the RASC has remained strong throughout all of this is testament to exactly how committed our membership base is, and exactly, I think, how much interest there is in the core product we're selling, which of course, as I said, is curiosity about the universe and about our place in it. So just to give you an example, the American Bar Association right now is hemorrhaging members. There are more lawyers than ever in the United States, and yet the American Bar Association is hemorrhaging members. So it's hard for any organization to survive. I'm just pointing out it's not just us. The organizations that are surviving have adopted 5 basic strategies that work. And fortunately, RASC was already underway on many or most of these by the time I got here. And so all I had to do was kind of, kick a few tires and encourage folks to double down on some of the things that were already happening. Overhauling the governance model and committee operations. The organizations that have failed are ones that have stayed with older models of governance, older models of organization, haven't tried to adopt, say, a modern competency-based, board-based governance model. It's tough, but the patterns that used to work to run a club and that work on a small scale still for running a club don't work when you're trying to run a national organization of 5,000 members. And so you have to be willing to revisit this. And of course, a number of years ago when RASC reorganized and did the whole certificate of continuance and changed to its constitution in order to become compliant with the Canadian Not-for-Profit Act, that was an important step. And some of the work that's going on right now in examining our bylaws, examining our policy manual, trying to fix them a bit where they seem to be a little creaky or not quite working the way that we would hope they would work for the organization to be kind of a well-oiled machine. That's part of that ongoing operation.
Phil, it's Dave here.
Yes.
Yeah, we need to wrap things up.
Okay, I'm sorry. Let me just
try. I got to give Jenna some time as well.
And I'll be done.
Okay.
And so the shift to having sort of empowered staff and professional staff carrying out some of the tasks that used to formerly be delegated to volunteers, that helps deal with the challenges on time. It also gives you the advantage of having people who are accountable for doing a particular job. And so you can actually, I can fire Jenna if outreach isn't working. It's hard to fire a volunteer outreach coordinator, So it lets you take action swiftly and lets you correct course when things need to happen quickly. The fact that we were able to pivot and go to so much online content and whatnot early in the COVID pandemic was because we had a tight, well-functioning staff in the office that was able to put their heads down and figure out some ways to fix things. Rigorously defining the member market, in other words, figuring out who our members are, but also who our members need to be if we're going to grow and be relevant in the coming years. That's never been more important. That's why we have a next gen RASC committee that's advising the board right now on how do we make the RASC more relevant to a younger demographic, to a more diverse demographic. Rationalizing programs and services. As I said, pivoting to online services was a great example of how you have to make changes in response to challenges and do it in real time. Last but not least, all of this is dependent on having good, robust technology. Everyone here has had the horror of dealing with our current membership database, IMIS, and the literal monsters it generates when you try to do something simple like, change your address or pay your renewal for the year. Fortunately, that's going away. January, the new system will be up and running. That was one of the first things I did, was say we've got to pull the plug on this and get a new system. And 8 years from now, I or my successor will be throwing this system out and trying to get something else. But that's what you got to do if you're going to sort of stay functional and competitive and give people the kind of service that they should be able to expect from their society. I'm going to stop there, and I will stop sharing my screen. But I can go back to any slides if anyone wants to ask a question later. So
I just have one question, Phil.
Yes.
Mike was wondering, and I'm curious if there's any urgency to leave the current location with the current lease and with our interest to establish a new location for the Telescope Museum.
Yes, there is some urgency on that. We knew that they were planning to redevelop our location. It's going to be knocked down and turned into a seniors residence. We didn't know when. The reason we didn't know when was because neither did our landlords, because COVID hit them as well. What I have done is I have negotiated a lease to continue our current rent relationship through to the end of December of 2021. At that point, we're done. There is no continuance. The building is going away. So we know we have next year, the year of 2021, to figure out where RASC is going to live next. And amongst the things we have to think of is, what do we need to effectively run our outreach and our educational programming? I'd love to have a classroom that we could have students come into, perhaps our own planetarium. I'd love to have our own observing space. The Dorner Telescope Museum, of course, needs its own space and such. All of that suggests that maybe there'd even be an opportunity for a little bit of retail. We could have a little gift shop on the side to sell some of our books and whatnot. And then we just need the office space that we need for the staff that we're going to have, but also the staff we may ultimately be growing to, recognizing that one of the things we learned during COVID was exactly how much work we could do remotely. And so we don't necessarily have to have everyone in the office every day. And so we can be making some trade-offs as we look for space. And maybe we need a little less office space, but a little more telescope display space, that sort of thing. We've got a committee that we set up to investigate these things. They're going to be kicking into high gear right after the holiday season's over. And I suspect in 6-7 months into 2021, we'll be taking on either a new lease, or if we can convince a bank to finance us, purchasing some space and making our move slowly to this new place as we do whatever leasehold improvements and such are need to be done, so that by the time we get to December, it's a seamless turnkey move-in operation.
Okay, thank you very much, Phil. I'm going to turn it over to Jenna here. There we go.
Alrighty. Hi, everybody. First of all, I will be quick because I know that we have Dr. Boyle coming up later, and I have questions about CHIME and fast radio bursts. So I want to make sure we get to those. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here. And I look forward to coming in person when we can. And I wanted to also thank Mike and Dave and Chris, who've been doing a fantastic job with these meetings. You were, I think, the first center to adapt to the new world that we're living in, and you jumped on Zoom immediately, and it shows. And so we really appreciate the work that you've been putting in to reach out to your members and members from other centers too. And I know you get a lot of folks from across the country, so thank you so much for doing all that. Hi to the folks who are here from the observing teams. It's nice to see all the familiar names in the list. Today, I'm not going to talk about the online activities that we are doing. I'm going to focus on the Robotic Telescope project, which has been in the works for over 2 years now. And we're getting close to it actually functioning. And maybe I'll be able to explain away that $35,000 deficit that was listed on Phil's slides. So first off, back in 2018, RASC purchased a robotic telescope. It lives in California. It's a 16-inch RCOS. There are all the stats for the people who care about the stats. It's a nice telescope, and we had a vision to use it for, or a vision to allow RASC members to be using it. We have 3 ways in which it can be used. Oh, sorry. First, let me introduce the location. It's in the Sierra Remote it's at Sierra Remote Observatories. It's in the Sierra Mountains. It recently almost burned down, which was very stressful for us at the office. The fire got up to just about those trees there. So it was very close, but things are clearing up now. Ash has stopped falling from the sky, and things are getting much better, and we can get back to observing. So the scope, here's an idea of what the scope is capable of. We have the CCD chip and the telescope set up, as well as, which is this field of view right here. And we also have a 200mm lens Canon 6D strapped to the back of it. And so we can take photos at the same time with both of them. With the DSLR, we're able to get this a nice wide field. So if we're taking shots of like the Heart and Soul Nebula or the Orion Nebula, this works really, really well. And then this would be the same image that you would see with this setup on the CCD chip. So we have, it really is a fantastic scope, and I've learned this over the year or so that I've been working with it, that it really has some amazing capabilities. We can obviously do astrophotography with it. The next series of images are from competitions that we've had, processing competitions that we've run in conjunction with Sky News in the past couple months to build up hype. Ian Barreto has won twice for his photo here and for his photo in September, which was the Helix Nebula. And then in this year, in October, we got a few more applicants and people trying it out. I did go through the list here today, and I noticed that some folks who have edited photos are in the audience. So hello to Leonard and Dan. And if I missed anyone, I apologize. I just really quickly skimmed through and added some of the processed photos from you all in there. So astrophotography is obviously a really big one. This is a photo or an example of a processed photo from the 200mm DSLR on the back. We're also doing science with it. In this case, a lot of the science that I've been doing, at least, has been to do with exoplanets and variable stars. Although I do know that Rick Wagner, who is the head of the science team at the moment, is also in the chat, and so he may be able to answer any more science team specific questions as to what he's been up to. It's a little beyond what I can understand. For those of you who do not know me or don't know my background, I'm a marine biologist. I'm still kind of new to the world of astronomy as science and the scientific aspect of it. So this is one of the plots from our exoplanet research. And then finally, this is the one that I've been focusing on a lot lately. We do outreach with the scope. I also noticed that Terry Bridges is in the chat, and we're doing outreach with his university class right now as well. So we have 2 types of outreach that we do, outreach programs. Our first and more developed program is our advanced program, which is open to grade 11 and 12 students, first year university in the case of Terry Bridges, and CEGEP students. And students can, first of all, they get a presentation from a PhD student studying exoplanets as an introduction to the field and what's going on in the field right now, and the research, the most current and cutting edge research that's going on. The students get to choose the target that they want to image. They get to join for a live stream as we program their target into the telescope so that they can really see what goes into the process. And then they get data the next day after the telescope is run, which for me was important because I found that in high school, I didn't really understand what science was. Like, it felt to me a lot like learning facts, which is what mostly it is in high school. And so if we can give high school students the opportunity to take data that no one else has yet live, like brand new data, that's my goal with the project. We did have some students publish an article about their experience in Sky News. I'm just going to see if I can bring that up in this window. No, I can't. Hold on, let me switch sharing. So this is in Sky News, and this is an opportunity for students who go through the project to write articles about what they've done. And it's an opportunity to get published in high school, which is pretty cool. The grade 9 program is a lot simpler. Phil has kindly hired on an assistant outreach, or an astronomy outreach assistant who is working 10 hours a week, and she is really developing this program for grade 9 students where they can download data that has already been taken. So from previous runs, from previous grade 11 and 12 groups that have done it, and process the data, which involves a little less work and is a little bit more reasonable for grade 9 students to do. And regardless of the program, all of this is great for virtual learning because all of this is done on a computer. And you do not need to be at the telescope. You can run it from the computer. It's been a really nice opportunity for us to develop this program. I will be quick. The most exciting part for me so far has been that one of the youth members who has asked to learn how to do outreach on the telescope with other classes is now starting an astronomy club in her high school, who is going to get to do this program as well. So I'm very excited about that. On to the stuff that matters. The way that the project is structured, we plan on having 2 tiers of ways to interact with the telescope. The first being you can get access to the data that is produced over the year. And the second being that you can participate on the teams that run the telescope. Right now we have 2 teams that are prepping for the launch of the program. And they choose targets, they program the runs into the software that we use on the telescope. They start and turn off the telescope, and then they process the data and get it ready for release. So those are the 2 that will be available soon. In terms of the timeline, the data from 2019 and 2020 will be available for purchase by the end of November. That's what we're hoping, if all goes well. And of course, we have our new database system coming into play, and that's going to be on January 18th. And that's what's been holding us back. We need that new database system to be able to run the forums and the teams that we had planned for that particular level of usership, that team usership. So once that's in place, we should have about a month while we get the different websites working together, and it should be up and running. So that means that the whole project should be ready to go by February of 2022. It says 2020 there, I mean 2022. Sorry, 2021. Next year, 5 months from now, whatever it is. There is one last option as well for engagement, which is paying by the hour. We're still working on how that's going to be set up, but you will be able to buy chunks of time on the telescope. The benefit of that is that you get to choose the target, you get to choose exactly how it's shot, all that sort of stuff. So that's an option as well. Oh, I had a slide for this, so I forgot to put a slide in. There's the benefits for each type. The data users will get access to all the data from that year and to discussion forums about how to process it. The team users will have team-only forums where they choose the targets and learn how to process the images and also how to use the software, eventually possibly leading to actually using the software on the telescope. And then it's more of a learning and team building experience. It's about gaining experience on a telescope of this quality. Okay, that was super fast. I'm sorry I spoke so quickly, but I wanted to get it all done.
Thank you. That's awesome. Okay, so we're going to get Chris, if you can bring up your slides. There we go. We're going to just take a 5-minute bio break. And this is our Messier and Moon challenge. So take a look at the images on the next screen. There we go. See if you can figure out what they are. If you want to post them in the chat box, that's fine. There's no prizes, but there's a prize that you know what you're doing when it comes to astronomy. There you go. And we'll have the answers in 5 minutes. So take a 5-minute break.
Hi, Dave. I'll just test my my microphone. Can you
Yeah,
hear me?
it's good, Patrick. Yep. Thank you.
Excellent. Super.
Okay, folks, we got 1 minute left. Time to get back to your screen. Okay, Chris, if you can move to the next slide. And there's the answer to our M&M challenge for this meeting. So we're going to stop sharing if you could, Chris. There we go. And I'm very pleased to introduce Dr. Patrick Boyle, who's going to be talking to us about the CHIME radio telescope. There's been a lot of stuff on, particularly on CBC and various science magazines in the last few days, so it's perfect timing for us. So welcome, Patrick, and it's all yours. Go ahead and share your screen.
Thank you. I'm going to try and share my screen. Okay. And then I'm going to. Okay, can you see that?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me. It's a great honor to come and talk at the Royal Astronomical Society. I'm an astrophysicist myself, but I'm always in awe of what the astronomical societies do, and the passion that people have, and the amazing photographs that people take, and we've seen some of them tonight. So so I'm greatly honored, and I want to talk to you tonight about an exciting project that I work on. I'm the project manager of a project called CHIME, and it's a project that is taking advantage of the digital revolution, and it's changing the game in radio astronomy. And as you can see here, there's about a quarter of our team. It's also changing the age profile in radio astronomy, which had grown quite old, but now is full of young people. So it's an amazing success story, and hopefully I'll excite you about it, and I'll tell you all about it. So CHIME is the Canadian Hydrogen Intensity Mapping Experiment. Now I'm going to break that down into three, so it's important to remember this during the talk. Canadian is the first thing, stands in itself. Hydrogen intensity mapping and experiment. Okay, so keep those three in mind. Okay, the vision statement is that CHIME is an experiment, and it's designed to map the history of the expansion rate of the universe by mapping hydrogen gas in faraway galaxies that are strongly affected by dark energy. That's the mission statement. That's why it was built. But it's also an excellent detector for fast transients in our galaxy and beyond. So tonight I'm going to give you an overview of why we built CHIME, the reason it is it's built like it is, and also some of our exciting results that have come out. Okay, it's led by McGill UBC in Toronto with NRC in Canada, and then we have a number of other institutes that are working as more junior partners. Okay, so we know the universe is made up of about nearly 30% of matter. Only 4% of that matter that we can see. What you take with pictures you take with your telescope, that you can see the stars and the galaxies. We also, the other 24% is dark, we can't see. We also know, I don't know if you can see my cursor. Can you guys see my cursor?
No problem.
Yeah, okay. So I also know that the universe is expanding, and not only is it expanding, it's expanding at an accelerated rate. And what we believe is there's this component called dark energy, which makes up 70% of the universe, which we know nothing about, is responsible for this accelerated expansion. And this is what CHIME wants to look at. It wants to look at the history of how the universe expanded. Okay, how we do it? How do we do that? Here's the other part, hydrogen intensity mapping. Hydrogen, the most abundant element in the universe. Very simple. One proton, one electron can exist in two states. Both the electron and the proton are aligned in spin, or they're not. Okay, and when this flip happens, a photon is released, and it's at 1420 megahertz, or 21 centimeters, about this length. Okay, it's a very, very, very rare phenomenon. The signal is extremely, extremely weak, but because it's so abundant, we can actually measure the signal, and people have made beautiful maps of the Milky Way looking at neutral hydrogen. Now, the other thing to take into account is the 21 centimeters. Where does that fall in the EM spectrum? You're used to looking in the visible, which is about here. 21 is brings you in radio waves. Okay, so you need a radio detector to be able to measure that. Now, I'm a hydrogen atom. I flipped in a galaxy. My photon has released 21 centimeters, but the universe is expanding. So that wave, as it travels across the universe, is being expanded. And that's called red shifting. And the photons then are red shifted to lower frequency or longer wavelengths. Okay. Now I'll give you an example of that. This is a galaxy NGC 3419 in the constellation of Leo, and which I see was part of the RASC Challenge 2020, a few other galaxies. So your members know this. So if I'm to look at that in terms of neutral hydrogen, I have my flux density or my intensity here, and I have my frequency. And here at 1420, you see a signal, and that's the hydrogen in our galaxy in the Milky Way. You see another bump here, which is from that galaxy, and you can see it's at a lower frequency because it's been moving away from us. So what we can do is we can relate the frequency to the redshift by the simple relation. And if I do the quick math here, we see that the redshift is 0.007. So this galaxy is quite close to us. So that's how we can use the hydrogen. Now, the goal of CHIME is to map out a large volume of the universe to measure the effect of dark energy. And you can see the volume here that CHIME wants to map out. The redshift range where dark energy is important is in 0.08 to 2.5. Now, the wavelength there, the 21 centimeter wave, has been expanded or has been redshifted to 30 to 80 centimeters. So much longer. And so the frequency range here is 800 to 400 megahertz. Okay, so that's one of the keys for CHIME. So to map out this massive volume of the universe, we need a huge field of view. CHIME is 200 square degrees. Imagine having your telescope to be able to see that. We need complete northern sky exposure. And we need to make many, many measurements or slices in terms of redshift or frequencies so that we can figure out the expansion rate. Was it slow then fast, fast and slow, or just constant? And because the signal is so weak, it takes a long integration time, 3 to 5 years. So what you need is a large reflector, a stable system, and massive, massive processing. Okay, so I'll go through those. Okay, so enter CHIME. It's located in Penticton, BC at the Dominion Radio Astrophysical Observatory. It's 4 half pipes, or 4 cylinders, each 100 meters long and 20 meters wide. And it's a non-conventional telescope. It does not look like your normal telescope. And so what I'll do is I'll go walk you through the concept of how it works. Okay, but the design for this was driven by this measurement of dark energy. So you're used to a normal telescope that focuses via physical delays, boom, into the focus. Okay, If I turn that on its side, that's what CHIME sees east to west. Okay. Now, in the north-south, what we have is we've many antennas that we look at the radio light, and that's called an interferometer. And so what you can do is you can see the light which is coming in, or the way radio waves or light coming in parallel from, and it comes in all directions. And then you can digitize it and read it out. Now the trick with an interferometer and the trick with CHIME is you can focus on any point in the sky by adding digital delays in software to your signals. Okay. Now, because it's digital, if you have enough processing power, you can make a copy of that signal. And to that copy, you can add different delays and focus on a different part of the sky. So if you have enough processing power, you can do this n times. And in CHIME, what we do is we do it 1,024 times. So we can focus on 1,024 points in the sky at the same time. Now let's look at the telescope a little bit closer. So as I said, it's a cylinder, or like a snowboard half pipe. It's 100 meters long, 20 meters wide, and the focal line is about 5 meters high. It's just normal chicken wire, just a mesh, steel mesh, and the waves come down, reflect, and up here, and what we have is we have the antennas. And the antenna design was led by a young graduate student called Maylene Day. Along the focal line, each focal line is 256 antennas, and they measure the radio waves in two polarizations, the X and the Y polarization. Now, you see here, this is our antenna. Now we must get each of the signals, you see them all along here. We must get that down from the focal line and down into our down to the ground so we can digitize it. And the first stage is that we have to put it through this low noise amplifier, which will amplify the signal enough to push it through the cable. And we've 50 meters of coax cable. We've 2,000 of these lines. So we can do the quick math, 2,000 times 50 meters. You can figure out how many kilometers of coaxial cable we have. Now, one of the things with CHIME is back in the old days, this low noise amplifier used to cost an awful lot. It was very, very expensive. And that was the limiting factor for radio telescopes. But now with the cell phone industry, and they need a gazillion low noise amplifiers for your cell phone, for the towers, you can buy these for 20, 30 cents. So now you're no longer limited by this amplifier, and you can have as many detectors as you want to look at the sky. Whoa. Okay. So once it comes down, we digitize the signal in an analog to digital converter. And this is custom electronics that was built at McGill, built and designed at McGill. And it's used not only in CHIME, but on many telescopes, on South Pole telescope, also in telescopes in Chile. And so we digitize it here, and then we break up all the frequencies. And on each board, you have 16 inputs. And then we have 16 inputs, 16 boards in a crate, and we have 8 crates altogether. And I just want to highlight the amount of data that we're processing, 13,000 gigabits per second. And when we started this experiment, that was more than all the mobile internet traffic in the world. Okay, now it's about 10%. You know, people are watching a lot of videos online. But just to give you a scale of the data that we're analyzing with CHIME. Okay, then we must bring it down, and we must get it ready to make our maps. And we do that in 3 computer clusters, and they house gaming processors, off-the-shelf commercial gaming processors. And this is another reason that financially that we can construct CHIME. These have come down in price, so what we've done is we've built 3 computer clusters inside shipping containers, right under the telescope. And I would just want to show you the number. Oops. The number of calculations that we do every second is 5 times 10 to the 15. And we do that 24/7, 365 days a year. So this is a massive computational challenge. So let's put all that together. Oh. Okay. So what we can do is we were able to make 1,024 points in the sky. We call them beams, and they're arranged in 4 columns and 256 beams, or 256 rows, and that's 1,024. And what we see is 120 degrees north-south, and we see 3 or 4 degrees east-west, where we're very sensitive, but we're actually sensitive all the way down to the horizon. So with CHIME, what we do is we don't move. We just let the sky rotate, and we just take pictures of the sky, and we let it rotate 7 days a week, 365 days of the year. And we just process continuously the data. So it's like having 1,024 separate telescopes on the sky. Now, we had first light with CHIME in September 2017. Now, astronomers like to take these very, very beautiful pictures. This is a picture of Cas A, which is also a very, very bright, the brightest radio source in the sky. And so this is a picture of the first light of CHIME. And what it is Cas A transiting across the telescope and then out the other side. And what we have is we've two out of the 1,024 antennas we were recording the signals from. And what this here is, you see the interference pattern from the 2 signals as the source transits. Now, to most people, it doesn't look a lot, but when we saw this, after 10 years of work, it was very, very exciting for us. And we had, it allowed us to scale from 2 antennas all the way up to 1,024. So this is a very exciting piece, and it happened. We had the Minister for Science, Kirsty Duncan, came out for first light. So it was quite exciting. So now we're making maps every day. And this is a map of the entire sky, horizon to horizon north, and all the way across a sidereal day. Okay. You can see all the gas. You can see sources, Tau A, Virgo A, Sig A, Cas A. You can also see the sun here as it transits through. Now, because we see all of the sky, and because this is an interferometer, we actually see aliasing of the sources as well. Now, this is, we make this by analyzing 140 million gigabytes of data each day. It's a huge amount. And this picture here would take years and years and years for a single telescope. So this is 1 frequency, 1 polarization. We have 1,000 frequencies, 2 polarizations. So we make 2,000 of these maps every single day. And the goal then is to combine the maps. Okay. So I want you to think, if you take your telescope and leave it outside, day, night, winter, summer, okay? And I want you to take long integration photos, then stack those photos together and come up with something meaningful. That's what CHIME is doing. And CHIME has to control its systematics down to the 0.01%. So that's why it takes such a long time. This is 52 days of data at 1 frequency. And you can still see artifacts here. We're still working on, we have a complicated beam pattern in our telescope. And it takes us a long time to understand the systematics, because what we need to do is we need to make such a long integration to smooth out the emission from the galaxy, to remove that so that we can see the signal coming from across the universe. So it's a huge effort and to understand your detector. Now that's a 3 to 5 year mission. So scientists being scientists want to look at other things as well. And one of the items that we're looking at are fast radio bursts. And these are intense bursts of radio light that shine for a very, very short time. And when they shine, they outshine everything else in the sky. Okay. Discovered in 2007. We had 60 discovered by all the telescopes in the world up until 2018. Okay. We know that they come from outside the galaxy. We know that they last for a few thousandths of a second. And the energy that they give out is ginormous. 10 to the 36 to 10 to the 42 ergs. Okay. Just in comparison, the sun gives out 3.8 by 10 to the 33 ergs per second. So the average FRB will give out this in 1,000 of a second, will give out the same energy as the sun does in 3 days. So, bam, gone. So what can create it? Okay, there's only a few things in the universe that are that powerful, that can create that much energy, but we don't know how they can create that energy in such a short time. Now, for example, it could be colliding neutron stars, merging black holes that LIGO see. Or it could be highly magnetized neutron stars, dead stars, called magnetars, that have these massive magnetic fields. Or even people have postulated that it's alien light sails powering up and ready to sail across the universe. And when they do that, they release this flash of energy. Like, we really don't know what they are. So if you want to pick a theory, off you go. So what makes CHIME very, very good is that this little circle here, that's the field of view of a normal radio telescope. The big rectangle here is CHIME. We know that there's thousands of these FRBs going off all the time. So all we do is just sit there and wait for them to go off over our head. Okay, and as I said, we're sensitive all the way down to the horizon, very sensitive above, right above us, but also sensitive down to the horizon. So if it's really, really powerful, we can see it off axis, but we're really looking for the ones right ahead. Now, these bursts of energy, they leave the source, boom, 10 to the 39 ergs. And then the waves all start going out and they travel across the universe. And you get dispersion, just like if you shine light through a prism, you separate out the colors. It's the same when the FRBs, when the light, radio light travels across the universe, it gets spread out. The higher frequencies arrive before the lower frequencies. Okay, and why is that important? That's important because this is a signature. It's a 1 over frequency signature that you get. Now I'm going to play this. I'll see if the sound works. You can tell me. Can you hear a sound? Thumbs
No
up.
sound. No sound.
Oh, okay. This was.
Sorry, Patrick, it's Krista interfering. If the sound is important to you, you have to reshare your screen and tick a box as you're setting the share, and you then get the sound.
Okay, let me try that. Stop. Share screen.
And before you accept the sharing screen, tick the box that says play sound.
I learned something new. To share your computer auto, please. No. Okay. No, I have to install something. Okay. You can see my screen again?
No, now we see your desktop and all its icons.
Oh, this is what.
Now we see you.
Yeah. Okay. Now let's see this. Okay.
There we are.
So,
thanks.
Yeah, this is my first time doing this in Zoom, so I know it. Now I've got to download something on my Zoom. So this would be as if you could hear an FRB, and what it is, you can hear the the higher frequency coming in and then the lower frequency. So it goes, I'll try it. It goes, ooh. Okay. Now you can hear the 800 megahertz, which is the high frequency coming in with the low frequency. So this is the signature we're looking for of the FRBs. Now look at the time on the x-axis. Starts at 2 seconds and lasts at 4 seconds. Now that's the typical delay that we see within our galaxy. So if pulse came across our galaxy. Now, what we see, we can see this, sometimes pulse is delayed because we see all the way across the universe. Some of the pulses are delayed by up to a minute or two. Okay, and we're listening for that. So in CHIME, what we're doing is we keep 4 minutes of data in memory. We don't know what the slope is here. And so we're constantly searching that. And we do that for 1,000 points in the sky. Okay, so we installed, we'd first like 2017 with 2 channels. We scale up to 1,000 channels, 1,000 antennas by about March. We turned on our FRB detector at the start of July, and FRBs just started falling out. It was absolutely amazing. And you can see here the Slack channel. This is on the 25th of July. You can see our Slack channel, the excitement, because we found our first FRB. We didn't know if they existed at these lower frequencies. They were only found at the higher frequencies at the 1400 megahertz. So you can see it here, 800 on this axis, 800, 400 megahertz. Now I've taken out the delay, which for this burst would be 15 seconds. And what you're left with is this tiny little smudge here, which when you sum up, you see the signal. But look at the time frame. It's a couple of milliseconds. And this little smudge represents about 3 days worth of the sun's output. Okay, so we found our first one the 1st of July. Now I remind you that 60 were found in the first 10 years. And in the first 17 days of operating, we found 13, which is amazing. And you can see here, some of them are across the whole band, some of them are narrow band, some of them are highly scattered, as if they've gone through some plasma on the way to Earth. And that, it was quite nice. We published our results in Nature, and they put us on the front cover, which was quite nice for our funding agencies, to try to get some more money. And now we're rolling in 2 to 3 per day. And I'm just showing you a snapshot here of 70 FRBs. And as you can see, they're all different shapes and sizes. And just to remind you that they begin life with the power of the sun. When they arrive at CHIME, the energy that CHIME picks them up with is the equivalent of a snowflake on your hand, landing on your hand. So here we have the equivalent of 70 snowflakes. So when it starts snowing next week, you go out and collect 70 snowflakes. Just think it's the same power as 70 FRBs. Okay, we found a source that repeated. And this was very, very important, because what this told us is that it's not an event that basically blows itself apart, like merging neutron stars or merging black holes. This means that it's something that repeats, so it's a different type of source. Okay, and we found it in this galaxy here, which is another one of the observation challenges back in January. And what we've noticed with the repeaters, we get a different structure. You see this marching down in frequency. It's on, off, lower frequency, off, lower frequency. Really unique signature. We call it the sad trombone. Bom, bom, bom. Okay, and we find this with repeaters, and we don't find it with the one-off sources that we see. Okay, we don't know why. Maybe there are different sources that's causing this. And we've published 18 repeaters so far, and we have lots more. We're getting ready to publish them. We also found another third repeater, which was found to repeat every 16.35 days, and it will be active for 4 days. And what we're able to do is we're able to mobilize many telescopes around the world using the European VLBI network, which is very long baseline interferometry, and use them together as this giant telescope. And we sat and we waited in this 4-day window for a burst. And what we're able to do is locate the burst back to this galaxy here, and particularly back to this little clump of gas here. So it's out in the suburbs of the galaxy. Now that was surprising because we expected these FRBs to be in high, dense, star-forming regions, and this is at the edge of just a normal spiral galaxy. So this threw up another question. What's causing this? And then just this week we had super exciting news in that we found our first potential FRB in our own galaxy. And again, in another constellation, which was in an RASC challenge back in 2018. And it's a magnetar called SGR 1935. And what happened is this started bursting in the X-ray. Some of the NASA satellites picked it up. So we started an observation just to look for it. And then all of a sudden it came in a huge double burst. We were also doing some tests for long baseline interferometry at ARO. And we were able to send a trigger to ARO to the 10-meter telescope. And we also detected it there. What that meant is that this was very, very, very bright. The trigger also triggered a detector in California, which is simply just an antenna in a bucket. And they have 3 of those, I think one in Nevada, one in California, and then one more north. And they also detected it. And what we learned is that the energy was 10 to the 35 ergs, equivalent to what the sun would put out in 30 seconds, okay? So it's not quite as powerful as the FRBs we see from other galaxies, but it tells us that these magnetars, these highly magnetized neutron stars, may be the source of some FRBs. So this has been pretty exciting, and people have been having fun with it because people really want to believe that this is aliens. They don't care about anything else. So there's a very nice tweet that went out for this. It says, "Aliens, take us to your leader." We said, no, it's not really a good time. So people are having a lot of fun with it. Okay, just finally, what I'd like to just tell you what we're doing next. To be able to localize the repeaters, you need for them to repeat. Most of them go off one now and again. We never know when they're going to happen. You need a lot of telescopes around the world to be looking at them, and it takes a lot of time. This is our first repeater that was detected, and this circle here represents the angular resolution of CHIME. Huge field of view, not so good angular resolution, about 1/3 of a degree. And in that, you can see which galaxy did it come from. So we spent a lot of time with the VLA in New Mexico, and we caught a burst finally. And in this region here, you can see we identified it down to this galaxy here. So you see the resolution that you need to be able to trace this back. So what we want to do with CHIME, we want to be able to measure the one-off bursts that you got one shot at back to their galaxy. And if you can do that for thousands of galaxies, you open up a whole new window in the universe, because you have a lighthouse at different distances of the universe, and you can measure and look at all of the matter that's in between. So what we're going to do is we're going to build 3 mini CHIME telescopes across North America. And we're going to use this technique called very long baseline interferometry and connect them together to form an equivalent of a 3,000 kilometer telescope. And if we can do that, we can get the angular resolution of 50 milliarc seconds. And that should allow us to localize thousands of FRBs. So we're already constructing our telescope in Allenby in BC. We're under construction at Greenbank Radio Observatory in West Virginia, and we're hoping to locate the third at the Algonquin Radio Observatory. And we're trying to secure a permit there to locate our telescope. So that's my story. That's a story about CHIME. It's a real Canadian success story. And this is adding another chapter to Canada revolutionizing radio astronomy and revolutionizing the way we view the universe. And after 2 years, this is only the beginning. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patrick. I have a question from Alistair, age 10, and he's asking, is the expansion of the universe faster than the speed of light?
No. Nothing can travel faster than the speed of light.
Okay, so thank you for that question, Alistair.
I think we have, I can't remember, is it 70 kilometers per second per parsec? It's a number. I'm not a cosmologist, so it's not a number I keep in my head.
Yeah, understood. So an interesting fact is that the Canadian scientists were the first in the world to prove very long baseline interferometry back in the mid-60s.
I have that slide right here.
Yes, my dad was one of the scientists on that. So, yeah.
Yes. Was it Richard?
Bob Chisholm.
Bob Chisholm. Yeah. I read his papers all the time.
Yeah. So, anyways, but we beat the Americans by 6 weeks, and I always put that in my presentation. So it was a race, and we won. Yeah.
Yeah, and I always show this slide saying we are not the first.
Yes. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions here?
Well, what is amazing is that the instruments that your dad used are still very, very important to the research that we do today with CHIME.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I don't see any other questions here, so thank you very much, Patrick. Okay. And maybe we can get you back in a while, maybe in a year and a half from now, and see what new things you've found.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Okay, thank you very much. So we're going to move on to the observation reports. And I just got to find everybody here. So here's the order. So Calvin, I'm going to turn it over to you first. Just let me spotlight you. There you go. You are up.
Okay, so that was a great presentation, and I'm really glad to see that. I guess I have to say, I have to confess that I'm a radio astronomer myself. So these are optical images though, and they're very much Halloween themed. I've got 2 photos here that I took. This one is, they're both reflection nebulae. This is the Witch's Head, which is in Orion. It's at declination -7, which is for me very difficult because I have a forest around me, and this is sort of on the edge. I looked at I let this go through the night. I went to bed and let it run. And every subframe I looked at had trees in it somewhere or other. So I did my best. I threw away half the data and I made this image, and it came out quite well. It's actually noisy, but it works really well for a Halloween theme. And this nebula, the Witch's Head, is very close to Rigel, the star Rigel in Orion. And I know a young boy whose name is Rigel. So I sent this to his mother. His mother is a CBC science reporter. And I said, give him this on Halloween. So this image was taken on October 12th. And we'll roll ahead. So my other theme, Halloween theme, is a ghost, the ghost of Gamma Cassiopeia. This is the one that I have no trouble finding. It's way in the north and very easily found from my observatory, but I found this one very difficult to photograph. I've tried several times, and I find this is probably my best shot at it. It's I guess that red is probably some other non-reflection stuff, but a lot of it is reflection nebula. And the star, I think just off the edge is the Gamma Cassiopeia, which is the part of the W of the Cassiopeia constellation. So that's my best shot after several tries, and I'm fairly happy with that one. That's it for me.
Okay, thank you very much. Jim, Sophia, if you can, let me just spotlight you. Your video's off, Jim. Jim must have stepped away from his desktop for a minute. So we'll move ahead to Richard Taylor then, and we'll get back to Jim.
Okay, these are my best shots of Mars. I've been spending the month trying to work out different ways of doing planetary photography, trying to catch Mars opposition. And I'm still trying, having some success, some failures. The one in the middle at the top was a night when I forgot to change the white balance on my camera, and it was trying to do automatic white balance and jumping all over the place between purple and red and blue. It was quite a mess. So as I say, these are my best shots so far. I'm using an 8-inch Schmidt Cassegrain, my old Bausch and Lomb, with a 3x Barlow, taking about 3 to 5 minute videos and then stacking it up and using the Registacks with the wavelets processing to get some of the detail out. Next one. There's my view of the challenge object. That was the 21st of October. And if you look at the next slide, I've got it labeled. There's the Solus Lacus. I checked this against oh dear me, the solarium to make sure that this is what was showing that night. So I'm pretty confident that I did actually catch it. Next one. And I've also been practicing a little bit on Jupiter, but from my driveway, Jupiter is now setting behind all of the houses. It's pretty low in the sky, and the seeing is not very good at the moment. So I keep trying, but that's my best one. I was very happy to see that I got a couple of the moons in the shot as well. Next one. This is my Halloween contribution. Everybody was talking about the blue moon on October 31st, so I artificially colorized it a little bit. Next one. This is a more interesting view astronomically. I tried some of the stacking and wavelet processing from Registacks on the full moon picture and managed to bring out a lot of detail, of, especially around the rays around Copernicus and Tycho down at the bottom there as well. So I thought that was a very pleasing view of the full moon. That's all for me.
Okay, thank you very much. Up next is Taras.
Hi, I took some pictures over the span of a few months when we had a good conditions, and particularly in August, September, I was imaging the Bubble Nebula. This is about 2.5 hour exposure. It's still work in progress. And this is a hydrogen 2 region in a constellation of Cassiopeia. It's a relatively dim or decently bright object. It's about magnitude 10. It's a near giant, the object itself is near a giant molecular cloud, which contains the expansion of the Bubble Nebula, while itself being excited by the hot star causing its glow. So you see how the glow is reflected, glow from the star is reflected on the upper right edge. Let's go to the next slide, please. And that's M33. This one, I put about 4.5 hours of imaging, and this is M33, which is a galaxy third in size in terms of our local cluster, which is our Milky Way, and then Andromeda, and this is the third galaxy in our cluster, about 2.3 million light years away from us. The size itself of the galaxy is 60,000 light years, so it's decently large. It has about 40 billion stars. For comparison, Andromeda galaxy is believed to have almost about 900 billion to 1 trillion, and Milky Way is something in between that. there is a region on a lower right corner which glows a bit red. It's NGC 604. It's hydrogen 2 region in that galaxy. It's a very interesting object. It's 40 times brighter than our similar region in our galaxy known as Orion Nebula, and it's roughly in 1500 light years in diameter. So it's a really nice star formation region, lots of hydrogen in it, and it's 6,300 times more luminous than actually our Orion Nebula. Let's go to the next slide. Venus, I took this image in, don't remember, I have the date handy, but I believe it was somewhere in September when the planet was already changing its phase by getting farther from us, and this is only about half of it lit by the sun of the light. Sun of the light of the sun, while I actually imaged it through filter which allows for very narrow band of about 350 nanometer to get through, so the clouds on Venus can be seen, which I later on combined with the visual image. It's smaller in size now than it used to be in August or early August, and it's getting farther from us, so later on it's going to be even smaller in size and less details will be seen, if at all, even through that filter. Let's go to the next slide. And same story or similar story with Saturn is also similar as Jupiter. They're quite close together now, and it's going to be actually very, very close very soon. But this was done when it was still relatively high enough to distinguish or to resolve the Cassini division. This was, if I'm not mistaken, around September, when September 11th to be specific. So that for this picture I used actually, as well as for the previous one, the 18-inch RASC telescope from Fred Lossing Observatory. Let's go to the next slide. And so for this Jupiter as well. So just to make it, to shed more details on it. So 18-inch telescope in RASC Observatory is an excellent tool with mirror capable enough of resolving these details even for planets which are relatively low, as it was with all the three of them for the time being. And I'm really happy that I got to get this image with the help of the filters. So they all, except Venus, are imaged through RGB filters and then combined together. This reduced the dispersion, and because each color doesn't look much dispersed, and when you combine them together, you get a little bit more details. Let's go to the next slide. Yeah, the Mars is really the planet of these days. It's still quite large in size, about 20 arc seconds even these days. It was to approach us, which it did around, so the opposition was on October 13th, but the closest approach actually was around October 6th. So there is a little bit difference in terms of distance, but the closest approach on October 6th was 38.6 million miles from Earth, which is very close. The next such an opportunity would be in 2035, such a close distance. And these pictures are mostly taken with my 8-inch Schmidt-cast, except for the third from the left on August 1st, which was again with the RASC telescope. You can compare the amount of details in both. Let's go to the next slide. Yeah, and this is actually when it was at the opposition. So I couldn't miss chance to use the big telescope to actually do this kind of sequence of dates and compare the size. Again, in the center, it's on the right, it's with the 18-inch telescope, which works perfectly now. There was a little bit of an issue with its tracking, which Rick Scholl's completely perfectly fixed. So the telescope is in a great condition now. and it tracks well. It uses the go-to function well. So that allowed for really fine details resolution. Say on the picture on the left, you can see some surface of Mars details, like I believe it's Mare Serenium on the upper right part above that gray line, and Maris Marium on the left side with the protruding kind of peninsula called Gomer Sinus or Sinus. In the middle of the darker area is the continuation of that Maris Serenium, and if the contrast allows, you can see a little bit of volcano called Olympus Mons, somewhere maybe half a distance from the center of the planet towards 5 o'clock to the edge. So there is a little bit of whitish area surrounded by a whiter, slightly brighter circle. That's the volcano. And on the right, right in the center, that kind of what looks like a three-fingered image or shape, it's Aurora Sinus or Sinus, while on the left to it, right in the center as well, I believe it's the Solis Lacus, which is the eye of Mars. And you can see also how the caps, the polar caps change. They're right now on this picture, they're on the top, but actually they're at the bottom, they're on the southern part. If you compare it with the previous slide, you see that the size changed a lot. So they melted a lot, and there is a bit of haze actually on the opposite side, on the northern part of the planet. I think this is all from me. Is there a next slide?
I think that's it. Thank you, Taras.
Thank you.
We're going to jump back to Jim. He's back at his computer. So hang on a second. Let me just spotlight you. There you go.
Okay, thank you. So this month's solar system challenge, the Eye of Mars, as you can see, Solis Lacus, and here it is. And this is the image that I presented last month. Next one, please. This next image of Mars was taken off my balcony about a month ago using the Celestron 8-inch Smith Cassegrain with a Mallancam DS10C Tech and a Beta UV IR cut filter. These frames were processed in Registax and Topaz Studio. Next one, please. Okay, in this next slide, I have a few descriptive comments about the image from what I've read, and I've also included a high-resolution NASA image below that maps the same terrain. So first feature I'd like to show you is Syrtis Major. Above, it's a dark, conspicuous volcanic feature of Mars. And it happens to be the first documented surface feature of another planet. It was noticed as early as 1659, appearing in a drawing of Mars by the Dutch physicist and astronomer Christian Huygens. The next feature I'd like to show you is Hellas, and hopefully you can see it was discovered by the Mars Global Surveyor, and it's a round, large, deep impact crater basin. And on my image, the round shape is not as completely evident, but nevertheless, you can see some indication of Hellas in the image. The next feature above is a large, it's called Arabia, and it's a large upland region in the north of Mars. And it's densely cratered and heavily eroded. And this area is marked by countless impacts. And this testifies to the landscape's ancient age, dating back billions of years. And the last feature I'd like to show you is labeled Sinus Sebaeus. And this is a region which contains heavily cratered highlands. So there you have it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. So Bob Olson, you are up. Let me just spotlight you. There you go.
Okay, how you doing, folks? I looked through my telescope for the first time ever, just looking at Mars. I thought with Mars up there, I had to actually see it with my own eyes. I'm standing on top of an 8-foot ladder. My scope is not set up for visual, as you can see, so it was doubly exciting to see Mars through it. And there's nothing like a flash photograph to make you your dark adaptation to come back. Next slide. This is really all started because I thought I'd take some, I had to try to do some planetary imaging. And I borrowed a camera from Mike Worth's, a really high-end camera. And I put it on my homemade filter wheel with a Barlow lens and extension tube to get it in focus, and an electric focuser just so I didn't have to climb up 8 feet to focus. The Barlow is a 5 times teleview focuser, or Barlow. It makes the effective focal length of my telescope 20 feet. Next, please. Now, the camera is a high-speed 60 frames a second camera made by Point Grey. It uses USB 3, and the problem with that is the cable is 6 feet long. That means I had to sit outside in October when it wasn't so warm as it is today. And I do not like doing that much. And I needed also to be outside to run the telescope, because when you have a 20-foot focal length, the field of view is so small that I had a terrible time trying to find Mars, even though I could see it easily. It was tough to get it in the image. Okay, so next slide. All right, so I did some imaging of Mars on October 10th. Next. And October 11th. And what's interesting about this picture is that the Martian day is about the same length as ours. So you can see the two images are pretty similar because it's about 1 Martian day apart. The planet has rotated once. Okay, next. And then the next. And then the next. All right, now, just something about this. When you do planetary imaging, you're using lucky seeing. And so I took 60-second video clips, and over 5 nights that I was doing this, I took 77 videos. So that's about 77 minutes of videoing. Each video is about 2,500 frames. So I had about 200,000 frames to look at. That's about 202 gigabytes of data. And I used the best 15% of that to get these images. I used 9 different programs to capture and process this data, and 3 of them were new to me. I had no idea how to run them. I should have phoned RASC. And to get great images, you need great seeing, you need great equipment and great capture skills and great processing. So if you see a planetary image that looks like it was taken from a satellite, like Terrasses were fantastic images, you better be impressed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bob. So we're going to turn it over to Philip.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, Mars seems to be the topic of the sessions. Not quite in the same category as Teresa or Bob, but a bit like Richard, I found it a bit of a challenge, and wish I had more time to spend on the processing. But anyway, I have a few results. So these, I've got 2 images to show. Were taken with my 11-inch Schmidt Cassegrain. First one I tried using with a 2 times PowerMate Barlow. But I've just recently got an ASI 294 camera, and so this is my first outing with the new camera as well. Next slide. So just a few annotations on this. We'd heard a couple of people talk about the Hellas Basin or Hellas Planitia, in the bottom left of the image there. There's another big area in the top of the image called the Elysium Planitia. And that's sort of shown shown where that area is. But I thought just out of interest, for the face of the planet that's in a couple of different images, just show you where some of the successful Mars missions in recent years have been. So in the top left area there, the Mars Science Laboratory, also known as the Curiosity rover up in Gale Crater. So that's sort of in that area of Mars. And then one of the early pioneer rovers, the Mars Experimental Rover called Spirit, is also in that area. Next shot. So I was a little bit happier with this photo. This was taken about 12 days later. And I was somewhat happy with the results because of the weather conditions on this particular night. It was blowing about 25 kilometers an hour, gusting to 45. Telescope's wavering all over the place. I'm trying to get as clear images as I can. I can see the clouds coming in from the north, heading toward the south, and rushed to try and get some images out of this. I was pretty happy with the result at the end of the day. Within an hour of this shot, it was pouring down rain. So you can't really tell when you're going to get your best images. It's quite a bit of a challenge. Next, please, Chris. Thank you. So in this shot here, a couple of things that have been mentioned. Obviously, the Solis Lacus has been of interest as the observation challenge. So I was very pleased to see that I got a good shot of that. So it really looks like the eye of Mars in that particular case. Doing a little bit of research on that, there was an interesting story popped up with Percival Lowell's name. As part of his musings about what he believed he was seeing on Mars, he believed that the Solis Lacus region was the planetary capital of Mars, because he could imagine seeing lots and lots of canals, which he believed were highly focused in that area and intersecting in that area. So it made absolute sense that that was the capital of Mars. We kind of know these days that's not quite the case, but nonetheless. Also in the image, I was fairly pleased to see a little bit of detail that I've never been able to capture before. Top left, you can see a little bit of a brown smudgy region, which obviously Taras and others had captured a slightly better picture of, but Olympus Mons is there. And also the marks around the mid right-hand side, you can sort of see a brownish finger coming up, which then does a left-hand turn and then starts to head up toward the top left. That first part is actually Valles Marineris, the large canyon area on Mars. So again, lucky conditions, and I really appreciated that comment from Bob about an imaging session being a series of lucky shots. So I was happy to get enough lucky shots for being able to present something tonight. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you, Philip. So Paul, you're up. I'm just going to, that's what he looks like. Oh, just a second, I gotta remove spotlight. There we go.
Thanks.
So, are you there, Paul?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Okay, I've put a picture up so that you don't have to have your video on.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. I'm still trying to conserve my rural, very limited bandwidth, so appreciate that. Okay, hi everybody. I trust everybody's doing okay out there. I've got a number of things to show you tonight. This first slide is actually of the Dominion Radio Astrophysical Observatory, which you just heard about from Dr. Patrick Boyle in his excellent talk on the CHIME radio telescope. I checked this out. I checked this site out early this summer while visiting my daughter out in BC. Since flying wasn't really an option and the COVID situation was under good control out west at the time, I decided to do this as a camping road trip and drove across country. And so I couldn't pass up the opportunity to visit this site. Unfortunately, the site was closed to public tours as a precautionary measure, so I could only really see it from its perimeter. Quite an impressive looking facility and nestled in some very pretty and peaceful terrain. Next one, please, Chris. So here you can see a bit of a close-up here. You can see some of the various antennae pointed skyward, including the CHIME array just below the big dish at the right. Even from this distance, distance, I got a real sense of just how large these antennae are. It's very impressive. Next one, please. Just another view of some of the gear here. As I mentioned, a very impressive looking facility, and I hope next time I get out there, I'll actually be able to do the tour that you're allowed to do. You can do like a self-guided tour, apparently, inside the perimeter for a closer look. So thanks again to for your talk there, Dr. Boyle. You've certainly given me some much appreciated context as to the interesting work being done there, and certainly adds depth to what I saw there for myself. All right, next one, please. So one of the other places I visited during my road trip was the Drumheller area in Alberta, the heart of our Canadian Badlands. I spent a couple of days out there checking out some of the fascinating landforms and, of course, the sky. This region is rich in both day and nighttime photo ops, and one of the most unusual sites there was the striking Hoodoos Formation not far outside of Drumheller. Here you can see some of the best known examples, along with the Milky Way in the background. The open cluster Messier 25 and the star-forming nebula Messier 17 are the bright knots just poking above the foreground at the left, with the bright and expansive scutum star cloud at the upper left. This was taken with a 50mm lens and Canon 60DA, and if you're into dinosaurs, fascinating geology, and some pretty dark skies, this is a primo destination to explore. All right, next one, please. So this is a wide field capture of one of last month's challenge objects, IC 1396, seen at the upper right, along with the better known North American nebula at the lower left. This was taken with a 50mm lens and Canon 60DA. I also shot separate frames with an H-alpha filter to bring out the rich nebular reds, especially in the relatively faint IC 1396 nebula. This view shows a crazy number of stars since it's right in the plane of the Milky Way galaxy. Next one, please. So IC 1396 is a pretty large emission nebula and star-forming region. It's over 100 light years across in size and located about 2,400 light years away in the constellation Cephas the King. It's largely energized by the bright star that you see near its center, and you can see that it's a complex collection of both gas and dust with numerous dark lanes running through it. This image is a 30-minute exposure taken with a 200mm lens and a Canon 60DA on a Star Adventurer mount. Next one, please. So within this vast complex is actually a really fascinating structure called the elephant's trunk. It's not all that easy to make out in this view since it's embedded in the greater nebula, but a closer look does bring it to life. Next one, please. There we go, thank you. This view was taken with my Skywatcher 80mm f7.5 black diamond Apo and an Orion SSP V2 CCD imager on an HEQ5 mount. It's a combined 1-hour exposure and starts to show some of the delicate structural details of the elephant's trunk. This is a broadband image covering the full visible spectrum. You can see that it's a pretty busy place. But to get an even more detailed view of just how complex this area is, I also imaged it with narrow band filters and an Orion DSMI 3 monochrome CCD imager to get this next view. So narrow band filters, they just each look at a tiny portion of the visible spectrum at very specific wavelengths of light. These wavelengths are associated with the light emissions from specific elements within the nebula, atomic oxygen, hydrogen, and sulfur. And then those emissions are mapped into the blue, green, and red hues that you see in this image. I love the view that these filters provide, since they not only allow you to determine some of the constituents, the actual constituents of the nebula, but also let you explore a much more three-dimensional view of this enormous structure. You really get a sense for the depth of this nebula, looking into the heart of it, and you can see some of the active stuff happening. Especially if I might get my cursor going here. I don't know if you can see that or not. I hope so. But you can see.
Paul, you can't use your cursor.
Oh, I cannot. Okay. You can just want to point out, you can see some of the active areas going on here where different components are coming together, and it almost looks like wind blown materials coming off the actual elephant trunk. Pretty fascinating. And I guess this is my Halloween exposure, since I kind of find this view a little bit spooky. So narrowband imaging. So this is a combined 6-hour exposure, because narrowband filters only transmit a very small portion of the visible spectrum. So you've got to expose for long periods of time to pick up enough signal to then meld into an image there. So yeah, it's a bit of a challenge to do narrowband stuff, but it's certainly worth it when it gives you these types of views into some of these fascinating nebular objects. Okay, next one, please. So the last object I have for you tonight is Mars, and see some awesome images of Mars tonight from various folks there. Hats off to you guys, because I know what you mean about the challenges involved in seeing Mars. I spent most of spent most of September and October actually observing and imaging this planet, since it will be about another 15 years until it's in such a favorable position again in our sky as seen from our latitude. Next one, please. Poke. So Mars was also the solar system challenge object last month in lieu of a lunar challenge. Specifically, it was the eye of Mars that was the challenge object. So here I am giving a Mars a poke right in the old Solus Lacus. I took this image on the night of September 26th, and of the 10 imaging sessions I've devoted to observing the red planet, this was by far the best night with the best seeing and transparency, at least out in my neck of the woods. I could easily observe sub-arc second features both visually and through imagery. It was really quite a treat. And all the images I'm going to show you of Mars here were taken with my 11-inch Edge HD using a 1.6 power Barlow lens and a NextImage 5 camera. So next one, please. Well, you got them all going there, Chris. Awesome. So for those of you who might be new to astronomical observing, and I see we have quite a few new members, and you might have given Mars a shot last month, some of you may have experienced a bit of disappointment depending on what night you went out. To that I say, don't be discouraged. Mars is a really small object from our point of view here on Earth, even when it's relatively close to us as it is now. As such, you need a lot of magnification to explore its surface features. Not only that, you need a night of good transparency. That is, it's got to be pretty free of thin clouds that'll dull the view. But the night also requires good seeing. And for those of you, again, unfamiliar with the term, seeing refers to the stability of the atmosphere. We have a problem in our neck of the woods, which can make planetary observing quite challenging. The jet stream often flows high overhead and can lead to a fair bit of atmospheric turbulence. Also, if you're observing from within the city, the heat given off by buildings and roadways can also muck things up pretty noticeably. And seeing can often change even during the course of a single session, going from excellent to just fair or poor in short order, and then back to great again. So patience is definitely an asset. So these three views are just pieces of my raw data captures. I see the video has stopped here. Pieces of my raw data capture taken on different nights to show you what a difference seeing can make. Under conditions of excellent seeing, you can see at the right, the air is very stable and you can discern a fine level of detail. These are the nights we really wait for. Under poor condition, that's not a night for a high resolution planetary observing. You're much better off observing large, wide field objects. And you can see that even under just fair conditions, making out finer details can be challenging. Unfortunately, those tend to be the average conditions for us here, but perseverance in getting a night of superior seeing certainly makes it worthwhile when you realize you're actually observing landform features on a planet that we hope to set foot on in the not too distant future. All right, next one, please. So this is a collection, a number of views of Mars that I took between September the 19th and 26th. The CM data that you see with each image indicates the central meridian facing us at the time the image was taken. This is analogous to a line of longitude on Mars. And as you can see, the views were taken all taken about 11 to 17 degrees apart. This corresponds to roughly an hour of rotation on the planet. And so I stitched these together to make the time lapse that you see at center. It shows about 1/4 of the rotation of the planet. You can see a variety of surface features here. Some of the notable ones include the southern polar cap, the northern polar haze hood on some of the views, the good old eye of Mars, and the huge volcano Olympus Mons, that circular feature that you see rotating into view just about now there at center. It's the largest volcano in the solar system, and so large that it's even visible from here on Earth, which is pretty cool when you think of it. You can also see that since the images were taken on 3 different evenings, some of the views are sharper than others, again, during the variable effects of seeing. I'm hoping to complete my data set this month, cloud gods willing, and show you a full rotation of the planet next month. So that's 6 hours or 1/4 of a rotation on the planet Mars. Next one, please. So the last piece I want to share with you tonight is an attempt to image one of Mars's moons, Deimos, which is the smaller and outermost of the planet's 2 satellites. The moon is likely a small asteroid captured by Mars and is only about 6 kilometers across, with an apparent magnitude of about plus 12.5. It orbits Mars about once every 30 hours. The challenge with observing this moon is that it orbits very close to Mars, and its feeble light is easily swamped by the planet. So I use this sky chart generated by my telescope control program, Starry Night, to locate where I should find Deimos on this particular night. Phobos, as you can see, was going to be very close to the planet at this time, so I didn't expect to capture that, but Deimos was a possibility. Next one, please. So this is a single unprocessed view of Mars taken just before my attempt to try to photograph Deimos. The exposure here is 1/400th of a second, and Deimos is nowhere in sight. 1/400th of a second was enough to capture the amount of contrast and detail that Mars offered that night without oversaturating the planet. But it was nowhere near long enough to capture that little 6-kilometer wide asteroid. To capture the moon, I had to crank up the exposure considerably. Next one, please. Oof, sorry for the assault on your eye there, but a 10-second exposure did it. And this is my first observation of one of Mars's moons, along with a very, very blown out planet. So you can see Deimos just where the chart predicted it, a little glare of light there, and Phobos would obviously in this exposure be lost within the glare. In fact, you can see on my last image here, the next one there, Chris, if I superimpose the properly exposed Mars with the properly exposed Deimos, you can see, yeah, Phobos was very close to the planet, and there's no way I was going to capture it that night. I'm going to try to give that another shot there. I wouldn't mind capturing both of them since I've never done them before. So that's the bottom line with my shots on Mars there. I really want to encourage folks, if you haven't gone out and seen Mars yet, do it this month, because time's a wasting. The planet is already starting to become smaller and smaller in size as the distance between us and Mars grows greater. And so in not too very long from now, it's going to be difficult to observe even the largest details on the planet. So get out and get while the getting's good, especially since we've got some warm nights in the next week. Hopefully we'll get some clear skies with that. And so, oh, why, thank you. My 100th observation report. Now you're making me feel old. Anyway, good clear skies to everybody. I hope you all stay well, and good luck with your observations, and we'll catch you next month. And thank you for that notice.
All right, so I believe I'm the last one to present my observations. So this is a shot of Triangulum Galaxy M33, which was the beginner's challenge last month. You can see this galaxy naked eye from a dark sky location using binoculars, and you can even attempt naked eye. This is also possible, right? So this was taken with a 4-inch refractor, focally reduced to f5.6, and this is 2.5 hours exposure time here. Next slide. All right, so our intermediate challenge was Saturn Nebula, all right, and I tried to image it with a 4-inch refractor, and it didn't really work. 4-inch refractor is not an adequate, apparently, instrument for that. It's a really small nebula. You probably can do it still, but my attempt wasn't satisfactory. So I looked into my recent pictures, relatively recently taken with my SCT, which I unfortunately no longer have. And I found this. It was taken back in July. So I happily sent it to Chris. And this morning I was looking into my notes, and unfortunately this is not Saturn Nebula. All right, so Saturn Nebula is a planetary nebula in Aquarius. All right. This is actually blinking planetary, which is about the same size, about the same color, and about the same magnitude. Planetary nebula in Cygnus. All right, and here's 1 hour exposure with an 8-inch SCT. An epic fail attempt with our intermediate challenge, but looks like I'm the only one at least trying to present it. So this is still the best one presented tonight. So next slide, please. All right, so this is IC 1396 nebula that encloses the elephant trunk. This has been taken with 200mm lens and a crop sensor DSLR. Right, this is a stack of several dozen 30-minute, 3-minute untracked subs with 2.5 hour approximate total exposure time. Just note that there is a bright red star there. This is a Mu Cephei, which is one of the largest supergiant red stars known. All right. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yes. So the previous 3 pictures were our challenge objects. All right, but I also have quite a few more just images just for fun. Fall is actually galaxy time. It doesn't have as many galaxies as spring, but it still has quite has to offer quite a few. And there is an obvious showpiece, Andromeda Galaxy. This one was taken with a 4-inch refractor again, and this is a single exposure, 7-minute carefully tracked shot. All right. Next slide, please. And this is Galaxy NGC 7331 in Pegasus. This is this is another a nice fall object that is commonly observed. This is a much further away galaxy, which is about 20 times further than Andromeda, correspondingly dimmer. It's about 10th magnitude and 10 by 4 minutes across, so it's pretty small too. Here I have 4.5 hours total exposure time with a 4-inch refractor. It's an 85f7. What's nice about this picture is there's actually a lot of galaxy here if you look carefully. They're not related to NGC 7331. They're actually some 8 to 10 times further away at about 300 million light years. But I was able to count like 20 of them here. And if you are able to see in the top right corner, there is a Stefan quintet, which is a commonly used challenge object for visual observations under dark skies using medium to large size telescopes. All right, next slide, please. All right, so another galaxy commonly observed in fall is Fireworks galaxy, or Caldwell 12. It's a galaxy in constellation of Cepheus. It's about twice closer to us than NGC 7331 at about 20 million light years. It's a little bigger too, and correspondingly brighter. It's nicely located in the part of the sky where there is a lot of things happening, and right next to it is open cluster NGC 6939, which appears to be around the same size, although it's 3,000 times closer to us, right? It's obviously part of our galaxy. And this picture here is a single shot, carefully, very carefully guided 30-minute exposure with a DSLR and 4-inch refractor using ISO 200, right? And I believe I have one last slide. This is Caroline's Rose cluster, which is an open cluster in the constellation of Cassiopeia. It's also some 6,000 light years away from us, similar to the one from the previous slide. It's bigger and brighter, and story has it was discovered by Caroline Herschel, sister of William Herschel, a great scientist. This is again a single shot here, 20-minute long, carefully explored, carefully guided. Right, and I believe that's it for me.
Thank you very much, Constantine. So you actually have already done one of you've done our intermediate challenge for this month. So you'll see that in just a minute. So last month we had our beginner challenge at M33, intermediate was NGC 7009, the advanced challenge was IC 1396, and the solar system challenge, and we got lots of folks doing that, the Eye of Mars. So for this month, our beginner challenge is Messier 52. It's an open cluster in Cassiopeia, and we'll see how that one goes. Next one. Intermediate challenge, NGC 7331. There you go. Constantine's already got his in. A spiral galaxy in Pegasus, and 10.4 magnitude. Our deep sky challenge is the globular clusters of the Fornax dwarf galaxy. And next slide. Our lunar challenge, crater Tycho. So hopefully we got a full moon on the 30th of November. You actually get it much before that, but there we go. Here are observing challenges for the month. Okay, so our RASC calendar is for sale. Normally we have them at our meetings when we're in person. However, there is a link on our website where you can order the RASC calendar. It's also, I believe, was sent out to everybody on our email distribution list. And so members price is 16 for one, 30 for two. Non-members, it's $20 per calendar. And there's 4 pickup locations in Ottawa. So you get to select those when you order your calendar, okay? Fred Lawson Observatory, of course, is always open. And we just need to respect social and physical distancing when we're up there. It doesn't hurt to flip an email out to the list if you're heading out to Flow, just to let people know that you're out there. We haven't had any major issues of crowding, but it's always good to know who's going out there. Unfortunately, our library is locked up in the museum right now. here are the folks who help keep our club running. And thank you very much for all your services there. So we had 127 people at our peak, and thank you to all the folks that came out this morning. Special thanks to Phil and Jenna and Patrick, who are our guest speakers tonight. We really appreciate that. And thank you to all our amazing images, especially those images of Mars. We're not doing our post-meeting entertainment quite yet. Okay, what are the benefits of membership? Well, first of all, the cost of membership is $88 a person, or for families, it's $82.50 for a family, plus $15 an adult, $8.10 per youth. That's a great deal. That's the way I have my membership. And $53 for youth membership, under 21 years old, and or under 25 if you're a student. So what you get for this membership? Next slide. Okay, membership benefits for our local center is that we have the Ted Bean Telescope Loan Library. You have access to the Fred Lawson Observatory. It's out near Almont. And once we get back in the museum, you'll have access to our library. As well, you get Sky News every 2 months. You get the Journal every month. The Observer's Handbook for members are in the mail, or shortly you're going to be in the mail, so you should receive them shortly. An excellent guide. And we also have our local astronauts, which come out monthly, thanks to Gordon Webster. Next meeting is Friday, December the 6th, 2020. It's going to start with our annual general meeting. Meetings typically last about a half an hour, thereabouts. And then we will resume with our regular meeting. And I believe we have Simon giving us a presentation at that meeting. We just have one presentation to give us a little bit more time to do the annual general meeting stuff. Okay, so I will be sending out the link for that a couple of weeks ahead of the meeting. Also, I'm looking for speakers coming into the new year. So if anybody has ideas for speakers, or you'd like to speak yourself, I have openings now, January, February, March of 2021. So please flip me an email, meetingshare@ottawa.rasc.ca, and I'd be happy to take your ideas. Or if you know somebody, thanks to Calvin for finding our speaker about CHIME here this evening. That was a great opportunity. Okay. And I think that is it for tonight. Is that it, Chris?
That's it.
Okay, folks. Well, thank you for coming out, and we'll see you next month. Stay safe.